Hi, I'm Bill Bishop, the Big Idea Coach, and I want to talk to you about something really important: how to future proof your business. We're living in an age of tremendous change. In the next few years, there's going to be more change than we've ever experienced in our lives, primarily because of the advent of artificial intelligence. Now, most of us are asleep at the switch when it comes to AI. We have no idea what's actually coming, but I can tell you that it's going to be very disruptive to a lot of people, but also present tremendous opportunity. So that's why we need to future proof our business. We need to be prepared for the future. For the last 30 years, we've worked with more than 5,000 companies. And one of the primary things we've done is help them come up with a big idea so they could future proof their business, which means that no matter what happens in the economy, politically, with technology, your business will always be viable. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. Extremely important thing because so many businesses have been upended by change. Just think about the pandemic and what happened there. People were not ready for the pandemic. They didn't imagine such a thing. And when it happened, it was very, very disruptive to so many people. But other people, other entrepreneurs, sailed through it because their business was future proof. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this talk. I hope you stick around to hear about it because it's really going to give you a whole different perspective on the future and how you can thrive no matter what happens. You're going to be very inspired. You're going to feel a lot more confident about the future. Actually, you're going to be excited about the future. So join me for this talk. Big ideas are forever. How to future proof your business. Thank you. I didn't go to business school. I took marketing courses. I actually took journalism with a minor in economics. So um, I don't know. I wasn't ever planning on having my own business, but it just kind of happened. And then I had to figure it all out myself. So in 1987, I was working at this marketing company. I thought, I can't do this anymore. I got to have my own business. So I actually started my business the day the stock market crashed in October 1987. So that was an auspicious moment. Um, but it turned out okay in the end, at least for me. Um, but when I started my business, I thought, well, what am I going to do? I have lots of marketing things I could do for people. Um, and, I could just say, hey, I have a marketing company. But I thought, well, that'd be too general. No one would quite know what it is. Right. So I started thinking, well, publishing newsletters would be a good thing because I knew how to do that using the Mac computer here. So went around saying to people, I said, well, I got a new business and it's doing newsletters, which in those days were printed newsletters. And so that actually worked really well because it was easy for people to get their head around that particular idea that I had this product and I was publishing newsletters. So I ended up getting, 20 or 30 clients that actually pretty quickly in the first year. And so the business really took off. So that was amazing. And then from that, I actually wanted to figure out how to connect all my clients together electronically. This was before the internet. And I started a second company, and that was called Bishop Information Group. And we created this thing called the Big BBS Bulletin Board. So it was a bulletin board system. So any of you are old enough to remember before we had web pages, we kind of had bulletin boards. So AOL was kind of like a giant bulletin board. CompuServe was a giant bulletin board. And I had my company had this bulletin board, and then we used it. It was really good, and a lot of people that used it. That was the first time they were ever on the internet at all, and they ever used a modem, ever used email, and we had thousands of people using that. So I thought we got it all figured out. We're doing newsletters, and we got this BBS system thing. And then in 1994, the web happened. And initially, I was like, um, the web. Nobody's going to want the web. Like for about 30 minutes, I thought that because that's what I wanted to think. But then I realized, that's big opportunity, but it's also very disruptive to the newsletters because now people won't need newsletters; they'll want websites, and it'll be disrupted to our bulletin boards because that's going to be completely passe, and everybody's going to want a website. So the internet, when websites happen, was this huge disruption to my business, and I lost all kinds of business like really fast. Now I picked up some of it from doing websites, but it was this whole thing because I had all these people dedicated to doing that kind of work. So that was not a good moment, but it was actually a learning experience because sat there and I thought, well, okay, what's my new product, right? That's what I thought first, and then I thought, you know what? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've mistake I've made is making my business about a product. Because no matter what idea I come up with, even like, okay, we'll do websites or something, right? Eventually that'll get disrupted. So I thought I got to think of something, how I could define my business so that I don't get disrupted by the future, because I knew the future was just going to keep happening and there was going to be all new things happening. Um, I thought, okay, I need to define my business in a different way. So what I concluded was it needs to be based on some kind of universal idea that is never going to go out of date, that I could anchor my business around. And so I started thinking about what that idea would be. And now this could be a little confusing because it's a little bit postmodern, actually. But my big idea ultimately was that I should help people with big ideas. Okay. Um, so, uh, so that became the thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to call my company the Big Idea Company now. And we can do lots of things. We can still do bulletin boards if people want it. We can do websites. We can do newsletters, but we could do almost anything because what we're really doing is saying, well, we're going to help you come up with a big idea. Okay. And that can't go out of date. So I thought, well, that was 1994, right? So I'm thinking, well, what would happen in 30 years, 2024, which, of course, sounded like we were all going to be flying in, you know, flying cars and stuff by that point. But, that was just crazy 30 years ahead. But I thought, well, that'd still work. That would still work. In 30 years, no matter what's going on, that idea will still work. My business can still be about that. I might end up doing it in all kinds of different ways, um, but it'll be about big ideas. So I started to work on that thinking, and I started to teach other people to do that because I said, what you really want to do is not run into the problems I had, because I could see how that was going to happen to everybody. And in the 90s, they really did get disrupted a lot. So I was trying to help get ahead of this and define your business in a way that can't be disrupted. Okay. Um, so I've developed this little way of developing the idea of a business. So I'll just give you the formula. Okay. And it was really based on my experience in journalism. So you probably heard of the who, what, where, when, how, right? Um, those are the elements that you want to put into a story. So if you're working on a story for a newspaper or something, you're going to say, okay, well, who, what, where, when, why, and how, right? Um, I would, how's not a Y, a W, but I added it in. How? So, so these were the elements. I thought, now, if I can define my business as an idea that has those elements in it, I've got a very solid idea. Okay. So let's start with the first one. And you can all think about this for yourself. Like, what's the big idea that you can define your business with that's future proof, right? Okay. So the first one is who. That's got to be the first one because it's about who you're trying to help. Okay. So I thought to myself, okay, well, who do I want to help? Well, I want to help entrepreneurs. And then I got a little more specific and I said, I want to help entrepreneurs who are ambitious and have good intentions. And then I thought to it, now, would that be something that would be future proof? And I thought, yeah, I guess so, unless we turn into like a communist regime or something, they'll outlaw entrepreneurism. That'll work, right? There'll always be entrepreneurs who are ambitious and have good intentions. So that became the first element of the idea of my business. It's all about who I'm trying to help, those kind of people. So think about for yourself who it is that you're trying to help. Okay. And make sure that whoever it is you're trying to help isn't type that won't go become obsolete, right? Like there's a particular kind, you think, well, yeah, but they may not be around, so for people who use bulletin boards. Okay. Like back in the day, if I said, well, it's people who use bulletin boards, that wouldn't work, right? It would, because then nobody's using bulletin boards and I have no customers. So you want to have something that's specific, but not something that could go out of date. All right. So that's the first one. Who? Okay. The second is, well, what are you going to do for them? So this has evolved, but the first thing I was, well, I'm going to help them come up with a big idea, which is to say, okay, that means what's that? Well, why would they have that? So I'm going to help them with that because they want to differentiate themselves and they want to go to a higher level and they want to have more premium things to sell. So that's the what. I'm going to help them come up with a big idea. And then it evolved into, I'm also helping them build a new factory. So you've heard me talk a lot about that. So essentially, the short form of that is that it's like a platform network business as opposed to, hang on a second, somebody's coming in. It's like an airport, right? As you've heard me talk about before, maybe. So we have those two things. The what? What am I trying to do? So now think about yourself. What's the special thing too? Okay, it's got to be special, unique. What are you helping to do? And it has to be something too that isn't so specific that it could go out of date, right? So this is why we don't want to make it about a particular product or service, because any product, any service could go out of date. It could become obsolete at some point. And usually, a lot of times, that's very hard to imagine. Okay. But pretty well everything that you ever bought or you could deliver as a product or service could go out of date in some way. And of course, we've seen how technology can really do that, right? Okay. So what is that special thing that you're going to help those people with? Okay. Now, the next one is why. And this is really super important because otherwise you've just got a solution running around looking for a problem, right? So you have to get very, very clear about what the big problem is that you're trying to help someone solve. And once again, kind of a problem that will never, ever go out of date. Okay. So my problem that I help people with is old factory thinking. Okay. And old factory thinking is old ways of thinking, right? Whatever that looks like. So therefore, and there's lots of things I could say about that, but generally speaking, it was like, okay, that works too, because there'll always be a past. There'll always be things in the past that we did that no longer work. So therefore, old factory thinking is also future proof because you can't, it can never outrun that, right? There'll always be something that was, that we used to, that we do, and then becomes obsolete. So I go, anything like that, I'm going to help people stop doing, because it's like a habit, right? So we've gotten used to doing things in a certain way because of certain conditions, and then it doesn't work anymore, but we keep doing it because we're so used to doing it that way. So now think about for yourself the big why. Like, what is the big problem that you help people solve that is future proof? And you could borrow from mine because in a way, because you could always say anything that they've done in the past that no longer works is the problem, right? So whatever people are doing or your target audience are doing that you can see no longer works, that's something to educate them about and to help them address. And that can be future proof too, right? The next thing is how. Okay, so we're building up a package now that ultimately becomes this idea that you put out there. So the how now is, how do you do it, right? How do you deliver this? How do you help people? Now, once again, that how needs to be somehow future proof. So what I did was I created this big idea adventure process that some of you have done with me in my program, and I wanted to design that so that it would never, ever go out of date. And so what I did was I said, well, how do you get from being in the past to being in the future, basically? And what are the steps to do that? And so I created this universal process. And I so many of my clients use it too in their own way, but a universal process that would never ever go out of date. Okay. And so I'll just kind of go you through it a little bit with you, just so you can see the foundation of it, and then that you can build on that. So the universal process is when you working with someone is you start out by just helping them. Step one, assess their current situation. What's working and what isn't right now. Step one of your process. What's working and what is. So we have these scorecards that we use. That a lot of you have been using from our program scorecard. So you help them assess that. The second thing is to create a vision for the future. Step two. Now, neither of those could ever go out of date, right? It'll always work. So vision. What's the vision for the future? The third thing, I'm just going to keep it simple here, is okay, what are the steps required? What are the things we have to do differently to order to get to the vision? So we plan that out. Next one is, well, what resources do we need to achieve that vision and then implement those steps? And then next step is to implement that plan. And then the third step is to keep revisiting the plan and updating it. So that's like a mass customization process that could never, ever go out of date. And actually, what I've been doing is I've been training an AI, like a GPT, to actually do that process with people. So I'm seeing now that even an AI that I've trained could do it, right? That's what I wanted. I never anticipated that I would ever do that. But when the AI came along, I went, oh, now I can just get an AI to actually be able to do that process as well. So that's kind of interesting. And who knows where we're going with that. Okay, so then the how. So what's your how? How do you do that? A methodology that would never ever go out of date, right? So that you could apply it, you could use technology like AI with that, right? So I tell people with AI, I said, look, you can have the AI, but what you really want is your process that helps people get the result you're trying to get. And you figured that out, and then you train an AI to do that. So that way you've got your own intellectual property. Your AI is now an AI has been trained on your intellectual property. You own that AI. That's really where the future could go here. The last thing is when. Okay. And for me, the when is now, not later. Okay. Because people go, well, maybe I'll do it later. I go, no, there is no later. If you say that, you're never going to do it. So it's either now or never. And so when. So that's just kind of an added piece. But we're always in the now. There's no other time, really. We talk about the past, we talk about the future, but actually there is no such thing in reality as the past and the future. They're just in our minds, right? So so the only time is now. So I always put that a finer point on my process. So we have who you're trying to help, what you're going to do for them that's special that no one else is doing, what's the big problem that you're helping them with that no one's helping them with, right? How, or sorry, why, and then the problem. How is how are you going to do that? You have your methodology, and then when and right now, right? And then over a period of time. So if you can get those things in place and each element is future proof, then your business will be future proof. Now, why do we want it future proof? Again, why is that so important? Well, because because AI is going to be incredibly disruptive, and I think people really haven't completely grasped how disruptive. Now, I look at disruption not necessarily as a bad thing. It's going to be bad for a lot of people, but in the long run, it could be really good for a lot of people. But this is just how things go, right? So AI is this new technology. It's advancing. It's going to be disruptive. We have no idea what other things might be disruptive here, but that one is definitely something you can see on the horizon there. I mean, one of the things I've always said is that you can't predict the future. You can only realize that it's going to be different. That's the thing that's for sure, right? We don't know how it's going to be different. We just know that it will be. So if you have a business that's predicated on something that can be disrupted, even if it seems far-fetched at this point, that's dangerous, right? And for myself, it was like at that point back in 1994, I thought, I do not want to have that happen to me again. So twice bitten, you know, I was ready to do something differently. So that's worked, you know. So big idea program, this whole package that I put together. Since that time, you know, we've worked with like 5,000 companies. We've come up with thousands and thousands of big ideas. Um, it's been really exciting, and it hasn't gone out of date, right? And I can't imagine it will. Like I don't see it going out of date, right? So um, I'll just give you a couple of examples of ones that just examples of big ideas that other people did. Um, so you might have heard me talk about Bill Simpson. So Bill Simpson is a inventory management consultant. So that's how he presented himself to me when I met him, and how he was presenting himself to everybody else, you know. And he knew that that was a pretty boring idea that he was giving people about him, right? And I said, yeah, and you know, if you look on the internet, you'll find tens of thousands of inventory consultants on Google, right? Yeah, so that was the issue you had. You needed a big idea. So his big idea was not a product or a service. It was balanced inventory. Like it was so simple, you know. I said to him, I said, what are you trying to help people accomplish? The who, you know, who are you helping? Well, companies that have inventory. And I said, well, you know, what's the special thing you do? He says, well, I'm trying to help them have a balanced inventory, and you know that it's always not too much and not too little, but always enough to serve their customers and keep everything moving, but balanced, right? So it's the word balance. And so that became this universal future proof idea for him, that he was all about balance inventory now. So he went out and he presented that idea to companies, and the first 6 companies he presented it to hired him and went into his balance inventory program. And he said, you know, they weren't hiring me at that point. They were hiring the idea. You know, that idea got in their head, balanced inventory. They went, yeah. You know, I mean, it's so kind of obvious, right? It's like, it's not really that complicated, but because he just said it so clearly, balanced inventory, that they went, yeah, that's what we want. And then once that idea was in their head, there wasn't really anywhere else that they could go to get that from anyone because no one else was talking about that, right? And so 6 companies hired him just like that. Right. So that was enough for the first year anyway. And but he said too, you know, as time went on, he said, well, this will always work. Like it's not going to go out of date. Um, Second person is Richard Harvey. So Richard Harvey uh, is out in Prince Edward Island. So Anna Green Gables out there. Anyway, so he is on Prince Edward Island, and he had this program. He's a financial advisor, and he created this program called the Bucket List Program. So he'd seen the movie The Bucket List, um, and he thought maybe I could have a program about bucket list. And so that's what happened. He created this program called the Bucket List Program, and he became known as the Bucket List guy. He was a real promoter. So he had like a Jeep, and he had this big bucket on the top of the Jeep, and he said the bucket list guy on the side of the Jeep and everything. It was pretty funny. And he had like a bucket list conference and stuff. And what he was saying was, he said, look, you know, I can help you with your money, but what I really want to help you do is achieve your bucket list. And so if you come and have this first session with me, then we will work on your bucket list. I won't talk to you about your money. We'll just talk about what you want to do before you kick the bucket, right? And so that really helped him differentiate himself. It helped him get meetings with people because they all thought, well, that would be a fun thing to work on, and actually kind of important, actually, getting ready for retirement and so on. And so he got hundreds of people in his program, and he was differentiating himself for everyone. Believe me, there was nobody else in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, that was driving around with a Jeep with a bucket on the back of it, right? So pretty differentiating. But also, once again, future proof, because you know that was 10 years ago, and so today people can still work on their bucket list. 10 years from now they can still work on their bucket list. um, it doesn't matter what happens now. If AI comes along and starts doing financial services, then he can train an AI to do the bucket list program, and he owns that AI and then makes money while the AI does it. um, he doesn't even have to do it anymore. I don't know if that'll happen, but it could, right? And who knows what else. So, I mean, you're in the metaverse or whatever it becomes. We're in the metaverse, and uh, and you're in there with your AI avatar advisor doing the bucket list program, and you can imagine how that could be done in all kinds of augmented reality ways. Like you say, "Oh, I'd like to travel to Mount Everest," and all of a sudden, in augmented reality, this image of Mount Everest appears, and then you say, well, I'd like to go sailing. And suddenly in augmented reality, there's a sailboat. You can see it to help you visualize. I mean, it could be really good, right? I know that sounds sci-fi. It isn't. I've been using augmented reality with the Apple Vision Pro, and there's all kinds of even new apps just recently that come out that I can totally imagine doing that exact thing. So it's not actually that far-fetched. Okay, so he's got that, the bucket list. And then Sarah Hodson has physiotherapy clinics. Okay. And so she was really tied down to the idea that, we're doing physiotherapy. I mean, she said, we're way more than that and so much different than everybody else. But yeah, I guess, right, if you just come right down to it, we do physiotherapy. And she was frustrated because people thought they were a fitness clinic, or, they couldn't quite figure it out. So I said, well, what's the special thing you do? Like, what is the special way you go about doing this? And he says, well, actually, we help people develop healthy habits. And I said, and what, anything specifically? And there were these 6 healthy habits that she said we focus on helping people develop. Um, I mean, like eat right, sleep well, uh, get exercise. It's not obvious, but who's doing them, right? So the 6 healthy habits, and so they built their whole business around that now, and that future proofed them too, because I met them, worked with them before the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, they got shut down, right? Their clinics, like, they were shut down. But they immediately pivoted to online classes to help people with their healthy habits during the pandemic. So you can imagine that that was a really helpful thing for a lot of people when they were locked down during the pandemic, to work on these healthy habits with people on Zoom, right, in a group. So they were fine. And then they started realizing, oh yeah, our idea is the key here to our business. It's not about necessarily having more clinics or something. Our idea is not that we have a bunch of buildings. It's the idea is that we have people with healthy habits. So I can give you 500 other ones, but we don't have time. Okay. But this has always been my part of my underlying thinking here, is that we want to have a big idea because it'll help us differentiate. It'll help us create premium products. It'll help us create a new kind of business. But really key principle of it is it has to help us future proof our business. And so this is what when I go and give my talks to business groups, I'm always talking about the future and saying you've got to prepare for it. And that's why I also tell them, as we've discussed, that you say, okay, well, I have my present business. I call it their old factory. And I'm going to keep doing that the way it's done. But I'm also going to take out an insurance policy on the future. That's my new factory. And it will be built around a future proof idea. And that way you're covering all the bases, right? So 89% of your time on the old factory, 11% of your time on the new factory, and say, going forward, this is going to be a future proof business. Now, the other thing, which I'll probably do a presentation on soon, um, is that your business then becomes an idea hub. So you've heard me talk about value hubs. So I'll put that aside for a second, but an idea hub. And what's an idea hub? Well, it means that you have your core idea, the number one idea. So I have big idea, right? That's my core idea. And then in my hub, I have sub ideas. Okay. And so in that hub, in that wheel around it, I have things like, the hot dog trap, where you're like a commodity. I have the problem with penguins, that, you don't stand out from people, right? I have the product first trap, and so on. So I have all these other ideas that are all pointing to that main idea, which is that you need a big idea. And so that's when you can start to organize all your ideas. So even though you only have one key one, right? You can have all kinds of other ideas as long as they're all connected to that main one. So that's an idea hub. Okay. So I just started to formulate this idea of that. But you know how I got that idea? Like, this is crazy. Um, I was working on this book I'm doing from all these videos using AI to actually help write the book. So pretty interesting process, which I can explain at some point. But while it was doing that, it kind of hallucinated. Okay, it hallucinated, and it spit out something that I hadn't said or anything. And it's like the importance of an idea hub. And at first I was, oh, that's a mistake, right? And I went, wait a minute, that's actually pretty good. So it was like a mutation of my thoughts that got mutated from the AI. So these hallucinations can actually sometimes be good, right? So it mutated and came up with idea hub. So that's how I came up with the idea hub. So I thought, oh wow, that's incredible. Okay, so you have your idea hub, and then you have your value hub. That's sort of another layer, which is all the products and services now that are connected to helping people with that big idea, whatever it is you've got, right? So when we have a value hub, then we're unlimited number of products and services, and we don't have to make our business about any particular one, right? So Apple, if I don't think they still advertise this, but I still think it's kind of their idea, is think different, right? You remember those ads? So think different, and it's for people who think different. Our business is for people who think different, and so that idea is the center of their idea hub, right? And then they have all these products and services in their value hub, right? All of them helping people who think different, in order help people who think different think differently, do it even better, right? So hopefully that's not too confusing what I just said there, but the long and short of it is to say, okay, what is your big idea that's going to be future proof? It's not a product or service. And it starts out, who am I trying to help? Right? Like me, my case, it's people like you, entrepreneurs. What? Well, help them come up with a big idea to build a new factory. What is the what for you? The why, get out of the old factory thinking, right? What's your problem that you're helping people with? How? What's your methodology that you're going to use that will always work with people, no matter what their situation, no matter when it is done 20 years from now? And then when is, when does this happen, and over what time frame, right? So so that's your how you build your idea, your big idea. All right, so hopefully that's been helpful to you. um, like I say, it was really helpful to me, and one of the things that it's done is it's taken a lot of stress out of thinking about the future, because I thought people don't think about the future much. Oh, it's because they're so busy? No, it's because they don't want to think about the future. That's scary. We basically developed this attitude of that the future is scary, um, which is very, very unhelpful. So, but if you have this idea, well, I'm going to anchor my business in these future-proof things, then when the future happens and things change, you're not scared, because you've got a path forward. It's sort of onward leading. There's nothing that's going to knock you off, right? And that the future becomes an exciting thing, not something to be dreaded. All right. So onward leading.